Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith, Pennsylvania editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Anthony Hennin. This week, lawmakers discussed the feasibility of creating a EV fee that would cover what they would have spent on the gas tax, but it's not exactly something that Democrats in particular think is feasible at this point. Anthony, tell us a little bit more about what this controversy is.
Yeah, so this basically centers on the fact that Pennsylvania has one of the highest gas taxes in the country because the way that we fund highway and bridges, construction, maintenance, et cetera, most of that falls on the gas tax. That's responsible for about 70% of the funding to do that statewide. So it's pretty crucial here in ways that it's not as crucial in most other states. And this has become a bigger problem because over in recent years, we've seen a steady decline in gas tax revenue. Cars are getting more fuel efficient. We're seeing the rise of electric vehicles cut into that a little bit, not as much just yet, but it's becoming more and more of a factor. So essentially, we've seen various talks about this for months in different Senate and House transportation committees. And so now we're looking at a bill that would institute an electric vehicle fee paid when you register your vehicle and paid annually or monthly if you want to set it up like that, but basically to replace some of this declining gas tax revenue. Currently, electric vehicle owners are supposed to basically pay this to the Department of Revenue every month through an alternative fuel vehicle tax. But it's convoluted. A lot of the public doesn't know they're actually supposed to be paying this in the first place. And it's not that much revenue in the first place. And so essentially, this EV fee would be about $290 a year. And that's tracking pretty closely with the gas tax. Right now, I believe it's about, on average, Pennsylvania drivers pay about $285 annually through the gas tax. And so this has actually been watered down a little bit. This bill, Senate Bill 656, when Senator Greg Rothman introduced it, the fee was looking to be about, I believe, $380 every year and $450 if you were a commercial driver. So that's been watered down, but Democrats are still opposed to it. Even though the committee approved the bill 22-3, this was done not because they specifically support the bill, but so it could be a wider debate on the House floor. Representative Ed Nielsen, who's a Democratic chair of the House Transportation Committee, says he adamantly opposes this piece of legislation. And so this is definitely not the end of it. This is not a smooth sailing toward an EV fee in Pennsylvania, but it's a start, and eventually we'll probably get some form of an EV fee that people will have to pay.
So you mentioned how this $290 fee is comparable to what a driver pays in gas taxes, but how do other states handle this? I know Pennsylvania has one of the highest gas taxes, so I'm kind of curious, how does this compare to other states that maybe have more EV adoption or have different ways of funding roads and bridges?
Yeah, so there's several states that already have an EV fee. One thing that House Democrats pointed out was that if the bill passes and becomes law, the fee would be the highest in the country. And that's partially why Nielsen was saying that 290 is way too high, which is true, where other states, most of these fees are either less than 100 or maybe pushing up to like 150 or so. But I think, again, when you look at other states and how they fund highway construction, maintenance, et cetera, there's a mix where some have higher registration fees. Others, it just comes out of the general fund. But when you're looking at, Pennsylvania relies so heavily on the gas tax for these issues rather than raising money in other ways. It does make sense that they would aim for parity on their EV fee as well. So I think when you're comparing these, I think it makes more sense to compare it with the state's gas tax rather than other states and how they approach the EV fee.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Anthony Hennin, I'm Kristen Smith. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.
Knowledge is power, and you deserve to know what happens in your state government. That's why the nonprofit Franklin News Foundation is bringing you straight news journalism through the Center Square, reporting on state authorities and publishing stories that show where your money goes and who spends it. By supporting the Center Square, you can track politicians' use of taxpayer money and demand transparency from elected officials. This is how we can equip everyday Americans to hold their government accountable. Become a supporter of Franklin today at franklinnews.org/donate.